Jason Statham stood on the top floor of a parking garage, hands braced on the ledge, gazing across the city skyline. He was in town for a brief promotional event, just a few days to handle interviews and signings. Then it'd be back to shooting his latest film overseas. The evening breeze rolled in, carrying the faint sound of traffic below. For a moment, he savored the quiet, allowing the day's stress to ebb. He'd parked his prize car here, believing it secure, and come up to decompress after a hectic schedule. A text chimed on his phone, probably his manager reminding him of tomorrow's early meeting. He sighed, deciding he'd better grab some rest. Turning away from the skyline, Jason strolled down the concrete ramp leading to his designated spot. Twilight had nearly given way to darkness, but overhead fluorescent tubes buzzed, illuminating the dusty corners. His footsteps echoed in the largely deserted level. Most folks had cleared out after business hours. From 50 feet away, something felt off. The posture of his car, a sleek, silver sports coupe, didn't look right. Jason's breath caught. Approaching quickly, he realized with a twist of dread. The windows were marred with streaks of paint, the side door scratched deeply. A deflated rear tire. The stench of fresh spray paint hung in the air. Someone had vandalized his car. Anger spiked. This wasn't about the money or property alone. Someone had invaded his personal space. He'd grown up in rough neighborhoods, learned to treat property with respect. Spying the bright colors scrawled on the side, obscene words in neon graffiti, he clenched his jaw. Who would do this? He knelt, checking the tire, slashed with a blade. Glass shards near the door handle suggested attempts to break in. A wave of frustration coursed through him. Then came a scraping noise from behind a nearby pillar. Instantly, Jason's guard rose. They're still here. He pivoted, scanning the shadows. The level was mostly deserted, but far down the row, a group of 3 huddled near a battered sedan. Young men, baggy clothes, arms scribbled with tattoos. One of them, hunched over a can of spray paint, turned sharply. The clang of a can hitting the concrete reverberated. They froze, realizing they'd been spotted. Their eyes locked with Jason's. One let out a hushed swear, elbowing the others. Jason advanced, each step fueled by righteous anger. The punks exchanged uncertain glances, clearly unprepared for confrontation. But the biggest among them, maybe 6 feet tall, broad shoulders, sneered, rolling his neck as though limbering up for a fight. He flicked a glance at Jason's vandalized car, then at Jason's stony face. Problem? The big one asked, voice oozing mockery. He tossed his can of spray paint from one hand to the other. Something on your car? Jason exhaled slowly, controlling the urge to lash out. You did that, yeah? He pointed at the neon graffiti. Why? The big thug shrugged. Why not? It's a nice ride. Thought we'd leave our signature. Another laugh from his buddies, though it carried a note of forced bravado. Jason's gaze fell on the slash in the tire. So you think it's fun messing with people's vehicles, destroying property? A shorter thug snickered. Don't act so righteous. We do what we want. He brandished a cheap blade, waggling it in the dim light. Got a complaint? Jason clenched his fists at his sides. He'd seen punks like this many times, daring you to react, to give them the thrill of a confrontation. He forced calm into his voice. Where I come from, that's not an excuse. Apologize. Maybe we work something out. If not, I'll call the police. He half lifted his phone as emphasis. The big one spat on the ground. Police? We can vanish in 2 minutes. That fancy phone won't save your paint job. Or your face. He smirked, nodding to his buddies. Let's show him who's boss here. In that moment, Jason recognized the inevitability. They'd chosen confrontation. Fine. He stepped back, giving himself space. The punks fanned out, forming a loose circle. A hush filled the garage, broken only by the hum of fluorescent lights. Adrenaline surged in Jason's veins. He'd done enough fight training, both real life and on sets, to handle a few punks, but it was never something he relished. He'd preferred to avoid violence. But they've destroyed my car. They might do worse if unchecked, he reasoned. He raised a hand in a calming gesture. Last chance. Walk away, pay for the damage, we settle it. Otherwise, the big one snarled. Otherwise you what? He flicked the can of spray paint aside, stepping into a fighting stance. I'll show you how we handle punks messing in our business. A short, wiry thug rushed first, brandishing the small blade. He slashed at Jason's torso. Jason twisted, stepping back, so the blade cut empty air. He then seized the man's wrist, forcing it downward so the blade clattered away. A quick elbow to the thug's temple left him crumpling, stunned. The crowd of onlookers, only a few straggling drivers who'd come from the elevator, gasped in shock, phones raised. This was no choreographed scene. This was raw reality. Another punk, slightly taller with a buzz cut, tried to tackle Jason from behind. Jason sensed him, pivoting at the last second. The man's arms locked around Jason's midsection, but Jason planted his feet, hooking the attacker's leg, and executed a smooth hip toss. The man hit the concrete with a pained grunt. Freed, Jason glanced around, adrenaline thrumming. The big one still hovered, fists clenched, seemingly deciding how to strike. Impressive, the big one spat. You know some moves, but I'll break you anyway. Jason gave a small, humorless laugh. You can try. The big man lunged, swinging a heavy haymaker aimed at Jason's jaw. Jason ducked beneath it, feeling the rush of air. The man's momentum carried him forward. Jason, with minimal effort, stepped in, delivering a short, snapping uppercut to the man's ribs. The big one grunted, reeling. Not wanting to escalate too far, Jason pulled the punch slightly, enough to hurt but not cripple. The big man cursed, pivoting for another strike, but Jason angled away, hooking the man's arm. Another swift takedown, a judo-style sweep, sent him sprawling onto his back. He lay there, chest heaving, shock plain in his eyes. Who the hell? He gasped. Then realization dawned. You're that actor, the one who does his own stunts. The words laced with a mix of fury and disbelief. Jason just shrugged, not confirming. I do my own stunts, and I don't appreciate punks wrecking my property. Stay down. This is finished. The big man tried to stand, but Jason pressed a foot lightly against his chest, preventing him from rising. The man's buddies lay groaning near the curb, shallow lumps of bruised pride. Overhead, a swirl of watchers recorded the scene. The tension gave way to hush. Finally, the big man let out a curse-laden breath. Fine, fine. Enough. Jason stepped back, letting the man scramble up. He didn't run, just glared at Jason, spitting blood onto the pavement. You'll regret that, star boy. We'll be back. We got connections. Jason locked eyes with him, unflinching. If you're threatening me, you might want to consider how well it worked out for you tonight. The punks, battered and humiliated, hobbled to their battered sedan. The big man tore a piece of cloth from his pocket, pressing it to a bleeding lip. With one last hateful glare, they piled in, engine revving. Then they screeched out of the parking lot, disappearing into the city's neon glow. A wave of uneasy relief washed through the watchers. Some erupted in quiet applause. Others approached Jason with wide eyes, praising his quick takedown. Jason exhaled, body humming with leftover adrenaline. He turned to see the damage to his beloved car, spray paint cursing his name, door scratched deep, tire flat. The cost to fix it would be substantial, but that was the lesser worry. These punks might come for more, he realized. He tapped a phone contact, someone who could handle a quick body shop solution. Meanwhile, a few bystanders offered to give statements if the police got involved. He appreciated the gesture, but wasn't sure if calling the police would help. The punks had fled. Maybe it was best left alone. Yet a sour taste lingered, a knot of fear that these men wouldn't just vanish. That night, as Jason tried to rest, images of the confrontation replayed in his mind. He'd faced bigger threats, sure, but something about this group's arrogance and vow for payback unsettled him. In the underbelly of the city, so-called petty criminals could do real damage if left unchecked. He made a mental note, be vigilant. Because if they tried something bigger, they'd discover that messing with him, and by extension, people he cared about, was a mistake they'd regret in ways far beyond a bruised ego. The next morning, Jason Statham woke to a wave of texts, calls, and social media pings about the parking lot showdown. A few watchers had posted shaky footage, capturing the tail end of the scuffle. Rumors spread. Some said the punks used knives, others claimed an entire gang had formed. The truth was simpler, if no less concerning. As usual, Jason kept a low profile, avoiding sensational interviews. He took his car to a discreet garage for repairs, arranged a rental in the meantime. Days passed without further incident. Jason immersed himself in ongoing film commitments. But a sense of vigilance persisted. He'd been in enough real fights to sense that punks with battered pride rarely just fade away. Often they nurse grudges, plotting elaborate revenge. He half expected to see them lurking near his set or tailing him around the city. But nothing materialized. Then, on the fifth night post-incident, Jason stepped out of a late-night diner with a friend. The two parted ways near a deserted intersection. Streetlights flickered overhead, and a chill wind rustled stray trash along the curb. Just as Jason approached his new rental car, footsteps echoed behind him. He paused, turning slightly. A group of men, familiar shapes in the gloom. The big man from before, along with 6 or 7 others. More muscle, more numbers. They'd upgraded from punks to a small gang. And they weren't shy about it. 2 brandished metal pipes. One had a chain, another rummaged in a bag that might hold something worse. The big man stepped forward, grin twisted. You think you can humiliate us in that garage, and we do nothing? Jason's adrenaline spiked. He forced calm into his voice. 7-on-1. You must still be scared if you need that many. A ripple of anger flicked across the big man's features. You talk tough. Let's see you handle a real gang. This city's ours. Jason read the aggression in their stance. No desire for talk. They wanted a full-blown assault. He scanned the street. No immediate passers-by to get caught in crossfire. Good. He positioned himself, arms loose at his sides, prepared to defend. The man with a chain whipped it menacingly. Let's break him, he growled. The big man gave a curt nod, and they advanced. The first thug lunged with a metal pipe, swinging at Jason's chest. Jason sidestepped, blocking with a raised forearm. The steel rattled on contact, sending a jolt up Jason's arm. He responded with a quick elbow to the thug's face, blood blooming from the man's nose. Another attacker tried a wide swing from behind. Jason ducked, hooking a foot behind the attacker's ankle, forcing him off balance. The chain wielder aimed for Jason's ribs, but Jason pivoted, the chain whooshing harmlessly by. Chaos erupted. Streetlight glinted off steel as the punks hammered Jason with everything they had. Jason's mind moved in a sharp, focused haze, every strike deflected or minimized. He landed punishing counters, short jabs, swift elbows, a knee to a rushing attacker's gut. The street, once calm, now crackled with the fury of fists and curses. The big man, arms bulging with new tattoos, waded in, smashing a baton at Jason's midsection. Jason just barely twisted away, the baton grazing his side. A flare of pain, but he ignored it, responding with a brutal cross to the big man's jaw. The man reeled, but caught himself, roaring with rage. He forced a second flurry of strikes, each more desperate than the last. Jason blocked, though each impact jarred his bones. The man had improved, or maybe just ramped up aggression. Then a thug behind Jason tried hooking an arm around his neck. Jason jammed an elbow into the man's ribs, forcing a pained yelp. Another tried to tackle him from the front, arms spread wide. Jason used the man's momentum, flipping him onto the pavement. The sound of bone hitting concrete echoed in the night air. Amid the swirl, the big man seized an opening, driving a baton strike into Jason's shoulder. A crack of pain lit Jason's nerves. He grunted, stumbling. That moment of vulnerability saw the chain wielder lash out again, the chain wrapping around Jason's forearm, biting into flesh. Biting back a curse, Jason yanked the chain, pulling the punk forward, smashing him with a headbutt. The chain slipped from the thug's grip, freeing Jason's arm. He ignored the throbbing pain, adrenaline fueling him. The big man tried to press his advantage, baton raised for another strike. Jason feinted left, pivoted right, and hammered a savage uppercut to the big man's chin. The blow lifted him onto his toes before he crumpled. The fight wore on, each second feeling like minutes. Attackers circled, lesser punks who flitted in for quick jabs before darting out. But gradually, their bravado eroded under Jason's relentless skill. Bodies littered the pavement, some writhing, some dazed, others moaning. The chain wielder tried one last desperate swing, but Jason blocked with a forearm, delivering a finishing elbow to the man's temple. Finally, the big man, battered and bloody, found himself alone, the rest of his crew either unconscious or refusing to stand. He panted, chest heaving, eyes wild with disbelief. Why you can't? You're just an actor. Jason's chest rose, fell. He took a step forward, voice measured. I told you, I handle my own stunts. The big man spat, desperation fueling him. He lunged with a last punch. Jason sidestepped, hooking the man's arm, using his momentum to slam him face first into a parked car. The man slid to the ground with a groan. Jason pinned him lightly, making sure he wasn't seriously injured. The big man struggled feebly, then went limp, spent. Around them, the battered remains of the would-be gang lay in disarray, scattered across the deserted intersection. A few wide-eyed bystanders hovered at a distance, some filming, some calling for the police. Sirens echoed faintly, growing louder. Jason could have fled, but he saw no need. He'd done nothing illegal, only defended himself. The big man coughed, blood dribbling from a split lip. This isn't over, he gasped, though the threat sounded hollow. Jason gazed down at him, a flicker of pity crossing his face. It is if you've got any sense. Next time you think of vandalizing or jumping someone, remember this night. Moments later, 2 patrol cars squealed to a stop, officers rushing out. They paused at the sight of Jason standing among a half-dozen beaten punks. What the? An officer blurted. Bystanders quickly explained the story, how these men had attacked Jason, how it was clearly self-defense. The officers began cuffing the conscious punks, calling ambulances for the rest. The big man, pinned by a scowling officer, glared at Jason with one last hateful glance as the officer read him his rights. In the swirl of flashing lights, The Rock simply gave his statement, explaining how they'd vandalized his car, threatened him, and made good on their threat. The police recognized him, nodded with a mix of admiration and exasperation. Cleaning up the punks would be extra paperwork, but it was at least a problem solved. As dawn approached, the adrenaline wore off. Jason's bruised shoulder throbbed, and a few scrapes stung. But relief overshadowed the pain. He recalled the punks' vow for vengeance. Well, they'd tried. They discovered the man they singled out was no typical victim. They discovered skill, discipline, and moral backbone. As he drove away from the scene, this time in a replacement car borrowed from a friend, he reflected on how quickly petty criminals could escalate. Some claimed to run the city's underbelly, but in truth, they had no idea how swiftly real skill could dismantle their illusions. They had messed with the wrong man, defacing his property and charging him with numbers. And they ended the night battered, humiliated, and in police custody. In the weeks that followed, the punks faced charges for assault, vandalism, and weapons violations. The big man, especially, saw his street rep crumble with the viral footage of Jason calmly dismantling them. Meanwhile, Jason returned to his usual routine, unbothered by further threats. Word on the street was that messing with Jason Statham spelled guaranteed humiliation. In the end, the punks' attempt to salvage pride only cemented their downfall, leaving them to reflect on a hard lesson. A single unstoppable force of skill and resolve easily topples even the most brazen pack of street thugs.